All right, so here we are live with Tom Dusenberry, who is the Hasbro Interactive former CEO and VP of Hasbro. He is also the CEO and founder of Dusenberry Entertainment. So we're really excited to have him here on chat, and there's actually a lot of nostalgia when it comes to the games that he's worked on, and I'm just excited to hear about his entire career, everything that's led him up to working at Hasbro, which again, so much nostalgia of all the games he worked on, such as Pac-Man, Frogger, RollerCoaster Tycoon, which was a huge one for me.
Hmm.
And yeah, and we're happy to have you, Tom, and thank you so much for being able to join us in this live stream today.
Well, thank you, Jordan. I'm excited to be with you.
Perfect, I appreciate it. So, yeah, like I said, I was talking to you even before the live stream, and even now, the games that you've worked on are I'm sure that you get this a lot of times on a lot of live streams that you go on or a lot of interviews that you go on. I'm sure that for like 90s kids and they're very nostalgic to work on. Can you kind of just give us uh, an intro, a brief introduction of what led you up to working to Hasbro and then what also led you up to working on your own company and just talking a little bit about your schooling and about your background?
Sure, sure. Well, thank you. First of all, I really appreciate the opportunity. I started in the game industry on a loading dock of Parker Brother Games. So my job was to take Monopoly and Clue and games like that and put them on trucks and ship them off to all of our different retailers and stuff. So I was at the very, very, very tail end of the business, and I had a desire to be at the front end of the business, or where the decisions were. So over a 22-year period of time, I went from the loading dock to being the head of the company. And so it was an amazing experience. I think that it really helped me a lot from the point of view that I know the game business from the foundation up. So I kind of understand all the different pressures and things like that. And Jordan, I was really blessed because I was able to work on great games like Monopoly and Battleship and Scrabble and Clue and all these great games. But I also was able to play and be involved in the Nerf business as well. So I had some employee experience, and it was all really good. And so what I was able to do was learn about intellectual property and learn about what the games are. And the essence of what I really my entire career was based upon is the fact that there's only one thing that really matters in the game industry, and that is it's all about the fun. And so you really need to focus on what the fun experience is, whether it's a new original game that you're coming up with, or if you're taking great IP like Frogger or something like that, and creating something that still comes back down to it's all about the fun. So the reason that I got involved with Hasbro was the fact that Hasbro purchased Parker Brothers in an acquisition where they bought Kenner and they bought Parker Brothers, and we became part of the Hasbro corporate families. And my first job was I switched over and I became responsible for inventor relations. So I was able to go out and work with all the great inventors throughout the world and come up with many different games and experiences and things like that. And during that time, I was always focused on wanting to get into interactive entertainment. And so in 1995, I felt that there was a huge paradigm shift in the business, and that was that Microsoft came out with what was called Microsoft 95 at the time. And it was the very first time there was multimedia for the computer. So I convinced Hasbro to be able to go into that business, and that created Hasbro Interactive and Games.com. And from there, we created all these interactive experiences with all of our different games. And then we went on and we got licenses such as Pac-Man and Frogger and all those types of games. And we always wanted to do something new and original. And on our second try, we hit with Roller Coaster Tycoon, which was the number one game for 2 years in a row, which was pretty
Yeah, no, and again, like I love Roller Coaster Tycoon. I played that game like addictively. I think the first time was I was living in Jersey, and I got it like in a cereal box or something like that, Roller Coaster Tycoon, and I played the CD-ROM, and it was one of the most addicting, one of the best like intros to gaming that I've ever had. So Um, the next question I had was in terms of the transition that you made with Dusenberry Entertainment. So what kind of made the transition after 2001 when you started working and you thought of creating your own company coming from Hasbro?
Sure. So, real quick on RollerCoaster Tycoon, when the game first came in by Chris Sawyer, he had called it White Knuckle, and he was trying to express, the emotion and the experience of going over the roller coaster. And we had just purchased Microprose, and Microprose had a game called RollerCoaster Tycoon. So I kind of knew that the Tycoon franchise was kind of cool, and it was a resource management type thing. And then when we thought about amusement parks, the thing that everybody kind of gravitates around is the roller coaster. So we came up with roller coaster and then combined it with Tycoon from a franchise point of view, and that's how the name Roller Coaster Tycoon became the name. So then to answer your other question, I had built Hasbro Interactive up to me about $300 million in sales, and it was hugely successful in the marketplace. But it was a misfit with Hasbro at the time because Hasbro was a toy and traditional game company, which meant that it has certain ways of being able to distribute its products, has certain ways to account with its products, and the interactive business was vastly different than that. So the corporation made the decision that they should divest of Hasbro Interactive. And so I led the initiative to be able to sell our business to Infogram, and that gave me an opportunity to exit and become an entrepreneur. And I created Dusenberry Entertainment. So the idea behind Dusenberry Entertainment was to be an entrepreneur and not have to worry about all the corporate responsibilities, but to really focus on fun and to focus on what the consumer experience would be from a gameplay point of view. And so I went from being this big corporate job into running my own company and kind of being a one-man solution, but working with many different people on collaborative type of projects to be able to build my business to where it is today. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. No, that's great to hear. Since we come from um, a lot of entrepreneurs also watch this channel, and a lot of entrepreneurs specifically in tech watch this channel. Was there any? Is there any advice you can give, or anything that kind of like sparked the go-to-market strategy of when you started to release these games and when you started to make the transition onto your entertainment company?
Yeah, it's a great question. And in my business, which is the game business, there's really two key elements you have to make a successful game. The first is it needs to be fun, and so there's a lot of effort developed from a point of view of design work and tech work and programming to make the game a really fun experience. But equally important, Jordan, is the fact that your game has to find an audience. And so that's really critical. And a lot of times the game developer wants to develop the game and they develop it and they're really in love with it, but then it's like, well, who's going to play it? It's like, oh, we didn't solve that problem yet. So you have to really work on that. And I think the other thing that's really key in today's world versus, many years ago is the fact that if you create a game and you bring it into the marketplace, it's a live living thing and you need to feed it and you need to update the content and all those kind of things, which is kind of a live op type of situation. So in the game business today, you need to develop a really fun game, but you need to be able to be committed to continuing that fun game from a point of view of live ops. And then what you have to do is you have to find an audience. A lot of time people, find a big piece of IP, which is a big brand that, helps bring the audience along, or they go and they find a specific area or genre and they try to really focus on that to be able to get the audience to be able to come along as well. So, once you get the audience, then what you have to do is retain the audience. And so that means that's where you have to feed new content and all that kind of stuff. So I guess in essence, it's having a great game, but also being able to find, identify, and feed that audience to retain them as long as you possibly can.
Because it's interesting that you mentioned too something that we talked a lot about before, like even with the clients that we've worked with and with other people that are in this industry of creating their own products, is that they need to find the audience, and a lot of times people fall in love like with their own product and they don't see a proper market fit. And a few times what we've discussed too is, and I really wanted to hear your opinion on this, that now I see a lot of CEOs and founders that they first they create the audience, like they create an audience on like Discord or on Facebook, and um, find what their audience likes first, and then they start to create their product, especially with all this AI coming in and kind of leveling the playing field of like the technical aspect. What do you think of like doing it in reverse and like creating the community first and then building the product afterwards?
So I completely support that, and I follow that method as much as I possibly can at this stage. But there's a lot of nuances to that comment, and that is that if you're trying to build a AAA type of a game, I mean that you're a big developer, you can't really put a lot into the marketplace because you've got to build it so that you've got the universe and the environment and all those types of things. But on the other hand, what you're finding is that what is really becoming more popular is like browser-based games. And there's a great example of what you're able to do is go out and find an audience, build something for that audience, and then if they react to it positively, continue to build it further and enhance that audience, and then find other audiences as well. So that is something that I think is really important in today's market, because if you can do an MVP and kind of understand what the audience is looking for, then from there you can feed that audience and see if you can grow that audience, and it becomes more organic than having to spend a fortune in trying to get customer acquisition.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the terms of also feeding the audience and creating that kind of like lifetime value with the clients, with the audience, I don't know why, but I know I keep going back to RollerCoaster Tycoon, but it was just because it was so memorable to me in my life. Um, and it was such a like the concept of RollerCoaster Tycoon, it was just like kind of so simple of like creating uh, creating an amusement park and making sure you're getting customers coming in and things like that. Is there something of that that's different between like creating the nostalgia for certain games and creating like lifetime um, clients that like have this nostalgia like years down the road? And is there a difference between like creating this nostalgia versus feeding clients something new and kind of having to like reinvent the wheel every single week to keep uh, customers coming back to the game or to the product?
Yeah, I think that the nostalgia is good. Like when I was the head of Hasbro Interactive, I had a strong desire for all the Atari products because that's what I grew up with, and I love Frogger and all those kind of things. So I acquired Atari for Hasbro. So to me, I was looking at that retro, or the older type of a game. But what I found was that although you have these fond memories, when you go back and try to play some of those older games, they become old and dated just because technology has gone on and on. And so I think that you have to kind of factor that in from a nostalgic perspective, and it's also kind of the platform that you're looking for. So to me, I think that you can find a lot of times, like if you look at like Call of Duty or you look at League of Legends, what they're able to do is they're able to come up with fresh new things every single year. So that if you've been playing that game, you might be playing that game for the last 15 years because there's always something new and exciting to be able to do. So that to me, what they've done is they've addressed the nostalgia from a point of view of what it used to be is great and there's a great memory, but what you want to really focus on is what today and tomorrow we're going to do from a point of view of what the stories are behind the games.
For sure. And going on to the next question too, is anytime that you're introducing something new to the market, we work with like a lot of software companies, like software as a service companies, but this can also go the same for the gaming industry or any technology industry. Is there a way in particular that you uh, test either certain features and see if they're like winning features or like winning concepts? Um, and how do you do the testing and how do you do the test and optimize or test and kill a feature if it's good or not?
Yeah, features are critical because it's the whole point about trying to deliver something that's fun is it's like I played it the first time. It's like, wow, that was really cool. I'd like to play it again, and then you want to play it again, which is that repeat play, and that's where features become very, very important. So what you want to do is you want to be able to kind of pay attention and listen to what your customers are doing and what they're playing with and what most excites them, and then be able to extend those features as far as you possibly can in the game But you also want to know that if you get into a situation where you're finding that your game is stalling out and that 40% of your players are falling off at a certain point, there's probably something there that needs to be addressed from a gameplay point of view to get them past that hurdle and to continue their play experience.
Yeah, I even heard that there's a game that's like very popular. I'm sure you've heard of it with Legend of Zelda as well.
Uh-huh.
And the I played that game too when I was a kid. My brother introduced me to it. And they kind of have like this threshold too of like capabilities or competencies. I'm not sure what the technical term is, but like not to make a puzzle, at least like with the gaming area, not to make a puzzle like so complex that like people just give up on it, and not to make it so easy that they don't have that challenge. So kind of also finding that sweet spot. Is that something that you implement too?
Yeah, very much so. It was interesting because we took a nostalgia game, Frogger, which was an arcade game, and it was a really popular Atari game, and we then brought it to the Sony PlayStation. And what was interesting was that the first two levels of Frogger were identical to what the arcade game was. So it was, crossing the river and crossing the road. After that, the next like 60 levels were variations of that and going through different types of experiences, hopping around and trying to avoid getting squished and stuff. When we went back and did a piece of research, we found that over 50% of the players never left the first two levels. So they were very satisfied with the nostalgic approach of what the game was. But the other 50%, they got grew right through those two levels and then wanted to experience and go to more. But to me, is that you kind of have to deliver something for everybody from a point of view of what the experience should be. And I find that with like Fortnite, and that is that I actually enjoy playing Fortnite. Now I can't really win the game because everybody's much quicker than me and that type of stuff. But to be in a community of 100 people and being in an environment where I'm trying to survive as long as I can really creates a really fun experience for me. So, I just think that, there I'm not looking to win or to become a world champion or anything else, but I'm looking for a really positive experience and an interaction with other people. And it delivers in a great way from my point of view because of
And even let's say that switching gears a little bit with the entrepreneurial aspect, in terms of people who they want to start their own company, is there any advice that you would give somebody who wants to start their own company, not necessarily in technology, but let's start like as a whole? What pieces of advice would you have for them?
You need to have a lot of fortitude to start your own business. And you need to kind of look at what your overall responsibilities are. And if you're a father of three kids that are under 10 years old, starting a new business might not be the best thing for you to do right now. But on the other hand, if you're in a position where you have an ability to take a risk and see if you can start something new, it can be a very thrilling journey for you. And what I found was that for me, coming out of a corporate environment and then becoming an entrepreneur, the learning curve was huge. And what I mean by that is that being a big corporate guy, I had all these resources that were available to me. So I always thought, oh man, I can do anything. I can do all these great things. So I didn't realize I was calling Steve Webster to do my graphics, and I was calling this person to think for my research and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, I became an entrepreneur, and I had to do all that myself. And it took a lot to be able to really get through that and understand that I needed to really get skilled at being able to do searches on the internet and being able to find the resources that I need to be able to do things. But once I got through it, it was pretty good because of the fact that what my ultimate goal was to have freedom and just choose what I wanted to do and who I wanted to do it with, and I was able to do
Yeah, absolutely. And the fortitude is a very strong. It's a very big thing that you need to have because it's very different. It's very different from like working corporate, where I think things might be a little bit more structured than entrepreneurship, where you have to kind of like create your own path.
Yeah, and I think that as an entrepreneur, you need to understand that. And what I mean by that is that um, sometimes you need to say this isn't for me and go back and get a job. And what I found was that with me, there was a lot of corporate people that were kind of in the same spot that I was, and they wanted to start their own businesses. I would say 80% or more went back and got a job.
Yeah, Yeah, you really don't know. You can like prepare for it so much, and things like yeah, it's like this, and this, but you don't realize that there's like so much. There's also like financial burden that you have to carry along with the team, and it's like you said, it's not just like wearing one single hat. You have to take on multiple roles, and some roles that are like even outside of your area of expertise, but you have to learn them for the sake of the company.
Yeah, when you have to, to get to your books and you have to get QuickTime out and you have to figure out what in the hell that is and get everything in for taxes and that type of stuff. It's like, wow, this is not what I expected from a point of view of delivering fun, but that's what an entrepreneur needs to do.
Yeah, I can even say the same for me. I had to learn accounting, and I was coming from software development, and I'd never even realized how different the accounting side is. Um, in terms of looking back on your career, both working in Hasbro and starting your own business with the entertainment company, what are the major lessons? We kind of tapped on a little bit of them, but are there any like one or two major lessons that you say is like, wow, that's really this really changed my life. It's really molded me, and it's really something I wish I'd learned earlier on in life.
I think for me, my career was pretty successful because I always seemed to be able to come up with different ideas and things, and I was able to produce. But I was never getting into the upper levels where decisions were, and it was because I kind of like had this I attitude, and it was all about me and how I wanted to impact things. And what had a profound change in my life, and to the point that I actually skyrocketed right up to the top of the company, was I changed my attitude from an I to a we. And what I mean by that is I never tried to take any credit for things that others could take credit for from a point of view of the overall goal of the team. And once I created this we attitude, and that was let's all work together and let's collaborate to make things happen. All of a sudden, my successes on the things that I was doing were really getting a lot of recognition, but they were getting recognition by my teammates by saying, "Oh, Tom had this great idea, and we want to implement that," rather than me, bombing the meeting by just having this great idea that embarrassed the whole team and stuff. So I do think that as you're growing up, you really want to stand out, but maybe a lot of times the best way to stand out is to be the best possible team player. And so that was something that was very, very profound for me. And then the other thing that I think that I have really tried to focus on is that um, work is fun, but work is hard. And you need to embrace the fact that sometimes you have to work hard to be able to get to those fun experiences. And so to me, I was always willing to put in the extra few hours from a point of view of, reading that research 1 month for time or trying to understand, where the loop was in the gameplay that needed to be figured out, because that ultimately would then make a better experience and would be more fun for everybody.
And now that you're also mentioning working with other people in the team and creating it more from like the I driven approach to the we centered approach, was there any projects both in Hasbro and in the entertainment company that you really remember looking back on, you really remember fondly, and you really think these projects changed the trajectory of where we were going with both companies?
Yeah, from a corporate point of view, I was running a software company, but I was owned by a big toy company. And some of our employees, we were talking about, what can we do to be separate and what can we do to really, maximize this excellence. And the idea came up to why don't we combine our toys with our interactive entertainment, and that created the smart toy category. And it really changed the dynamic from a play point of view because we everything from up until then where there was a toy or software was a one-on-one relationship. So it was the child and the screen, or it was the child and the Tonka truck. And what we did was we created the CD-ROM playset, which was put right on top of the key top. And what it then is we created this environment where you had a one-on-one experience. So the child was playing with the toy, and right behind the toy was the interactive experience from the software point of view. And that dynamic really created what smart toys are today from a point of view of creating that dynamic from a play experience perspective.
And I remember also having a like so nostalgic from like the 90s and the early 2000s, the entire CD-ROM set too, and how like we started to transition, especially when I started to become a teenager. of just playing with like the physical toys to playing with more so when the PC came on and when my family got their first PC. Do you even see like the future of when those children who are playing with the CD-ROMs back in the early 90s or in the 2000s, do you see the gaming industry being more so interactive rather than kids having like that middle proxy of like playing with a toy? They just go directly to the game, or do you always think there's going to be that toy aspect for kids?
I see both. I think that there's a need for a physical product and interactive product combined, but I also think that there needs to be physical product and there needs to be interactive product. So, I guess it divides itself into three different ways. And, I always get questions from parents and stuff like that is, how much screen time should my kid have and that type of stuff. And to me, it's a parental decision, but there's a time and a place for everything. And you can't just have your kid be on the screen all the time, and so you need to manage that. And they should be, wanting to get away from the screen from sometimes to be able to do other things because there's just so much more to life than just, looking at the screen all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the next questions that we had was our company, sorry, not our company, our audience is very into AI, and AI, as you know, has been like the pressing topic for like the past few years, especially with ChatGPT coming out. How do you see the integrations of AI in technology, in toys, in gaming, and just overall? Little loaded question, but wanted to get your take.
Sure. Well, AI is probably the most revolutionary thing since Windows 95. Really, from the point of view, all of a sudden everything's visual and AI is spectacular. I don't know how I can run my business today without it. I mean, and it's hard to imagine what we did before we had AI from the point of view of all the research, all the information that's available to us through the magic of it. But from a product application point of view, I use it really for two reasons. One is that when I'm building trivia games or content intense games, AI is a great place for me to be able to get meaningful IP related content that I can use. But then I'm also working with a very high end team of professional developers, and we're creating a generative AI product that helps coach you while you're playing different sophisticated games. And the executable of that is a animatronic sits alongside of your computer and becomes your buddy as you go through all the different play experiences. So we're using generative AI, bringing it out of the computer into the animatronic, and the animatronic is then sharing with you gameplay scenarios to enhance your game experience and to become your game buddy as you go through the play.
That's amazing. We like when I was telling you about Legend of Zelda 2 that we were playing it as kids. I remember that we would definitely get stuck on certain levels, and then my brother he purchased the manual of like how to pass certain mazes, and I was just like, it's just like so wild for me to like think about going into gaming now and then having this manual and opening it up and seeing how we solve a certain puzzle versus having like an AI co-pilot beside you guiding you through that. And
Yeah, cool. We've been using AI for 25 or 30 years. Back when I was running Hasbro Interactive, one of my first successful games was Scrabble. And Scrabble, it was a single player game, and you were playing against a very sophisticated AI called Maven. And what we were able to do with that was that we were to be able to create 5 different levels of Maven plays. So from a beginner perspective, you could go in and have a great time. Or if you were a word king and you wanted to be at the highest level, we could have a great time for you as well. So, AI has been around for a long time. And it's just a question of how you apply it.
oh, that's interesting that you mentioned that too. Because for me, and it's probably just the shallowness of like of what I've learned so far about AI. But for me, AI, I'm like, oh yeah, I just came to like actually being into the mainstream in the last like 5 years probably. But with a software like Maven, it was how was it helping with improving the Scrabble game? Like it was the same thing as like having that co-pilot said.
Scrabble up until Scrabble CD-ROM was a two-player game. You could play up to 4 players, but you had to have somebody else to play against. And what we were able to do is we were able to create a two, three, four-player game, but we were also able to have a one-player game and you to play against AI. And the vast majority of the people that were playing Scrabble were playing it against the AI. And it was really good because you would put your word down and you would figure it all out, and then it would quickly respond and give you something that you would then be able to work on. So you didn't have any downtime waiting for the opponent to be able to figure out what word they wanted to lay down on the board. And so, there was a new level of play from a point of view that you were very focused on your part of the game rather than the experience with playing with another live person.
Yeah, and even when you mentioned it too, with are you familiar also with Super Smash Bros?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I'm asking the king of gaming if he's familiar with these very mainstream games. But even with Super Smash Bros, we played it as kids, and there was also. And tell me if this is like kind of similar to the Scrabble AI, but it was basically that you could um, put a computer that you could fight against, and you could like set the difficulty of how difficult you wanted that computer to be, and you could just play battle a computer, which might be fair to say that that also would have been an incorporation of AI, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, so it's been going on for a while. I just maybe we're just starting to hear about it in the mainstream more so now.
Well, I think that developers are, very smart from a point of view of making solutions happen. And with Chat GPT, what it did is it just became a sexy way to do things. And I think that it kind of changed the world from a point of view that, in addition to applying things just into the product, you were able to actually have a direct impact on yourself. And that is, you were able to go in to do research at a very sophisticated level, and it was able to interpret what you were talking about and give you feedback that you didn't even imagine yourself. So I do think that, just like every other technology, everything continues to advance, and that ChatGPT just made it so that it was kind of like mass market type AI.
Amazing. So now even wrapping it up with just a question of your overall experience, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, just about how your experience of like working in a team and then having it more centered universally rather than just centered to yourself. But if you could go back to when you were 25 years old, like just starting your career off, is there any piece of advice that you would give your 25-year-old self in the world uh, that we have right now with AI and with all of this technology?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that if I were to look back and to make any changes, it would probably be that I would focus more on probably broader game opportunities, meaning that looking at um, League of Legends and looking at like some of the shooter games. I was always trying to stay away from those. Those became kind of the super genres. So from a business point of view, I would think that maybe I needed to be a little bit broader from a point of view of my thought process. But from a point of view of individually, what I would do is I would say to myself 25 years ago is that work harder than you've ever worked before. And what I mean by that is that, now that I'm to this level of my career, what I find is that all my successes really come back to one thing, and that is that I worked hard to be able to achieve that. And I think that a lot of times what I found is that the working the hard was more important than the success of the product because of the fact that I was working with all these other people and we were trying so hard to be able to make things happen. So in today's world with AI, where you have all these different shortcuts and all those types of things, I think that one thing that you need to really hold on to is working hard. And the people that do work hard and understand that, putting in a good solid, time to be able to do your job will pay huge rewards from a long-term perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And last, I know I said that was the last question, but this is kind of this will be the last question. Did you have a favorite game?
I have several favorite games, and it depends on the era. From an all-time point of view, I am in love with a dice game called Can't Stop. And the reason for that is it's a family game, and whenever we play Can't Stop, I know that my entire family's there, and I'm getting great joy from it. As it relates to other games, though, like Sonic the Hedgehog had a huge impact on my life. Frogger, of course, I spent thousands of hours playing that game. And more recently, as I mentioned, I do like Fortnite, and I play that quite a bit. And recently, I've been playing a mobile game called Puzzle Pyramid that comes out of World Winner. And it's a little puzzle game. It only takes 4 minutes to play, and I probably play that game 30 times a day. And I've probably played it for the last 6 months. So it's got repeat play. I want to come back and play it all the time, and I play it over and over and over because I know that I can do better. So those are some of the most some of the most popular games from my perspective.
Yeah, I should have started off with that one. I bet the family game nights get pretty good.
Yeah, there, that's what it's all about. And we play video games, and there's a lot of interaction there too. I mean, Call of Duty, that's nothing more like a team there. But there's nothing like having your family around, and the vicarious thrill of making sure that somebody loses their turn or something like that is always really
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Tom Dusenberry, for your time, and founder CEO, uh, Hasbro Interactive, former CEO and VP of Hasbro, along with the founder of Dusenberry Entertainment. So thank you so much for your time, and really appreciate you having you on.
well, thank you, Jordan. It was a pleasure.
Perfect. Take care.